She was just 15, limping through the dust, barefoot, bruised, and bleeding, after another night of beatings from the family that was supposed to protect her. No one in town stopped. No one cared, until a grieving cowboy, with a broken heart of his own, saw her, and what he did next would shake the soul of an entire town. But what neither of them knew was that the real nightmare hadn't even started yet. The wind was bitter that evening as Sheriff Carter rode into the outskirts of Ridge, a quiet desert town where trouble whispered more than it roared. As he dismounted his horse, he noticed something unusual near the edge of the dry trail. A girl, no older than 15, limping alone. Her dress was torn, soaked in dust and dried blood. Her left cheek bore a purple bruise. Her lips split, and her eyes haunted. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for help. She simply limped forward, one broken step at a time, as if trying to walk away from hell itself. Carter, a widowed cowboy who had buried his wife and daughter years ago, felt something stirred deep inside him, something he thought had died long ago. He walked toward the girl and gently asked, "Where's your family, darling?" The girl froze, then looked up, her eyes hollow. "I don't got one," she whispered. "They gave me away to my husband's people. They said I was a burden. They'd beat me when I didn't bring enough water from the well. I didn't do nothing wrong, sir. I swear." He knelt in front of her, heart sinking like a stone. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then replied, "Mara." A name soft as a prayer and bruised like her soul. Carter nodded. "Come with me, Mara. You're safe now." He took her to his small ranch just beyond town, an old wooden house that stood firm against time and sorrow. The place had been quiet for too long. Dust had claimed the corners, and memories echoed in the silence. But that night, something shifted. As Mara sat by the fire, warming her bruised hands, Carter watched her in silence. She didn't ask for food, though her stomach growled. She didn't ask for comfort, though her body trembled. She had lived through too much to expect kindness. In the days that followed, Mara spoke little, but her eyes said enough. Every scar, every flinch, told the story of a girl beaten into silence. Her husband, a drunk in his 20s, had married her in a deal made by her stepfather, livestock in exchange for a girl no one wanted. Since then, she'd been treated like less than a stray dog. Her in-laws forced her to work from dawn till dusk and punished her for breathing too loudly. Carter didn't ask questions. He just worked around her. He left food where she could see it, placed a blanket on the porch bench she liked to sit on, and mended the broken lock on her bedroom door. Slowly, the fear in her eyes softened into something else. Stillness, not quite peace, but the absence of immediate terror. One morning, he found her trying to sweep the porch with trembling hands. "You don't have to do that," he said gently. She looked at him, confused. "I have to. If I don't, someone will." She didn't finish. Carter stepped forward, took the broom, and set it aside. "No one's gonna hurt you here, Mara. Not while I'm alive." That evening, she cried, for the first time in front of someone. She cried without sound, tears falling like broken rain. Carter sat beside her and didn't say a word. He just let her cry. But Ridge wasn't blind. People started whispering. "Why is the sheriff taking in a girl like that? He's too old to be Savon runaways. What's he hiding?" Carter didn't care. He'd seen what others hadn't. The truth in Mara's limp, the ache in her silence. He didn't need their approval. He just needed to give that girl a chance to breathe. One night, Mara sat at the dinner table and asked in a soft voice, "Why did you help me?" Carter looked at her, his eyes distant. "Because someone should have helped my daughter, but no one did. I was too far out on patrol. By the time I got home, she was gone." The room fell into silence, and for the first time, Mara saw something in him she hadn't before. Not just strength, but pain that matched hers. The two broken souls began to stitch each other back together. She started humming when she worked in the garden. He began fixing up the house, one board at a time. The ranch, once silent and still, began to breathe again. But peace never comes without shadows. One morning, Carter rode into town for supplies and returned to find the gate open, the horse unsettled, and Mara missing. Panic set in. He searched the house, the barn, the well, nothing. Then he saw the boot prints in the dirt, 3 sets. Mara hadn't run. She'd been taken. He followed the trail through the hills, past the dry creek bed, heart pounding like war drums. Every step was a memory of what he'd already lost. He wouldn't lose her too. And then, as the sun dipped behind the canyon wall, he saw it. An old wagon, stopped beneath the broken sycamore. A man stood beside it, holding Mara by the wrist. Her face was bleeding. Her eyes were wild with terror. Carter didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, hand on his holster. "Let her go," he growled. The man laughed. "She's my wife. Ain't none of your business. She's a child, and she's mine now," Carter said, voice low as thunder. The man raised a knife, and before another breath passed, Carter's bullet struck the dirt at his feet. "Next one goes between your eyes," he warned. The man paused, studied Carter's eyes, then threw Mara to the ground. "She ain't worth the bullet anyway." Then he turned and fled into the trees. Carter rushed forward, catching Mara before she hit the ground. She clung to him, sobbing. I thought he was gonna kill me." He held her close, his voice steady. "Not while I'm breathing, Mara. Not while I'm breathing." He took her home that night. Neither of them slept. She sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, and he stayed beside her until dawn painted the sky gold. The next morning, something changed. Mara stood taller. She no longer flinched when someone knocked. She no longer whispered when she spoke. And Carter, for the first time in years, felt whole. But Redridge hadn't heard the last of the man who claimed her. And what was coming next would test everything. The silence the next morning was different, not heavy like grief, but light, almost sacred. Mara stood by the window, sunlight touching her face like a blessing. Carter watched her quietly, his coffee forgotten in his hand. She was still bruised, still trembling inside, but something had changed. A spark had lit behind her eyes. The girl who once limped through dust and fear now stood straighter, as if the weight on her back had shifted. But Carter knew better than to believe peace lasted in places like Redridge. By noon, a knock echoed through the ranch door. Sheriff Carter opened it to find Deputy Lane standing there, hat low and face stiff. "You need to come into town," Lane said. "The mayor wants a word. There's talk. That man, the one you scared off yesterday, he's telling people you kidnapped his wife." Carter didn't flinch. "She's a child, and he's a drunk with blood on his hands." Lane hesitated, then said softly, "I believe you. But others, they're asking questions." Carter nodded and turned to Mara. "You okay if I go?" She nodded, trying to look brave. "I'll be here when you get back," she said. He didn't say it aloud, but he feared what could happen if she wasn't. The ride into town felt colder than usual. The air buzzed with gossip. Eyes followed him like shadows. As he entered the mayor's office, Mayor Hollingsworth leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Sheriff," he said, voice oily, "we've had complaints. Man named Deke Mathers says you took his lawfully wedded wife. Says he wants her back." "She's 15, Carter replied flatly, "and he beat her near to death. Still, she's his wife. Paper says so." Paper didn't see the bruises. Paper didn't hear her cry in her sleep. The mayor sighed. "You're putting this town in a tight spot. Folks are scared of scandal. You shelter that girl, and they think you're hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything. I'm protecting her. That's what a man does when no one else will." Mayor Hollingsworth stood. "Then protect her quietly, because if this turns into trouble, I won't stand between you and the law. You understand me, Carter?" Carter nodded once, sharp and firm, then left without another word. On the ride home, a storm began to brew, not in the sky, but in his chest. He had seen this kind of cowardice before. People choosing comfort over conscience. He wouldn't let it touch Mara. But back at the ranch, something was wrong. The gate was wide open. The porch light swayed on its hinge. Carter's heart dropped. He leapt from the saddle and burst through the door. "Mara," he shouted. No answer. Then from the kitchen came a sound, a soft whimper. He ran and found her crouched behind the table, clutching a fire poker in trembling hands. Her dress was torn again, her eyes swollen. "I tried to fight him," she gasped. He came while you were gone. He said you'd hang for kidnapping. He said I'd die before anyone ever believed me. Carter clenched his fists. You're not going back to him. I'll bury him first. But Mara looked up, her voice shaking but sure. No, I'm done hiding. I want to tell them. Everything. What he did. What they all did. You sure? I won't live in fear anymore. Carter took her hand. Then we do it together. The next morning, Mara stood before the townspeople in the church hall, her bruises still fresh, her voice clear. She told them about the beatings, the arranged marriage, the cold nights on the floor without food, the punishment for speaking too loud, the time Deke had broken her ribs because she asked for medicine when she was sick. There was silence when she finished. Then someone in the back, old Miss Grady, stood up and said, "She's a child, and we let it happen." Another voice, then another. People who'd turned blind eyes were now ashamed. The room shifted. But Deke wasn't done. 2 nights later, he rode in with 2 other men, torches in hand, guns at their hips. They came to the ranch like wolves in the dark. Carter was ready. He met them at the gate, rifle loaded. You take 1 step past that gate, and I'll put you down like the rabid dog you are, Carter warned. Deke spat. That girl belongs to me. No, she belongs to no one. She's free. Then Mara stepped out from behind the door, lantern in hand. You want to hurt me again? She called. Then look at the fire in my eyes and see what you made. Even the wind stilled. Deke looked into her eyes, and for the first time, saw something that scared him. Not weakness, strength, the kind born from survival. He stepped back. This ain't over, he muttered. Carter raised the rifle slightly. Yes, it is. By morning, word had spread. The town, for all its flaws, had taken Mara's side. Carter had called a judge from the next county. Documents were signed. And just like that, Mara was no longer a runaway. She was adopted legally fully as Mara Carter, daughter of a cowboy who'd lost everything but still chose to save someone else. In the weeks that followed, Mara changed. She smiled more, laughed even. She began helping at the general store, and people called her Miss Carter with respect. Her limp didn't go away, but it didn't matter. It was her badge of survival. Carter built her a new room, painted it soft blue like the sky she used to dream under. And at night, she'd sit by the fire with him, telling stories, as if they were always family. But Deke hadn't vanished, and neither had the shadows he left behind. And as Carter looked out over the open land, he knew the fight wasn't fully over. Because when evil is humiliated, it doesn't disappear, it waits. And it was waiting for the right moment to strike. Carter sat on the porch long after Mara had gone to bed, the rocking chair creaking under his weight, the rifle resting beside him like an old friend. The stars above Ridge were scattered like forgotten prayers, but peace felt distant. Deke Mathers was still out there, angry, humiliated, and dangerous. And men like him didn't forget. Inside the house, Mara slept in her sky-blue room, a faint smile on her face, unaware of the storm Carter could feel building out in the dark. He'd seen this kind of hate before. He knew how it twisted, how it waited for nightfall and soft targets. And he was right. 2 nights later, it happened. The barn went up in flames first. Mara woke to the crackling sound, followed by Carter's yell. Fire lit the horizon like a warning. Horses screamed in panic. The flames leapt higher, eating wood and hay like a starving beast. Carter grabbed the water pump, while Mara rushed to open the stall doors. Smoke burned her throat, but she didn't stop, not until the last terrified horse had galloped into the night. Then, through the haze, a figure emerged. Deke, face smeared in soot, eyes gleaming like a man with nothing left to lose. A shotgun slung across his shoulder. You took everything from me, old man, he growled. That girl was mine. I paid for her. And now I'm going to burn this place to the ground, just like you burned my name. Carter didn't flinch. You already destroyed your name. You think taking her back's going to fix what you broke? She belongs to me. Deke roared, raising his shotgun. Before he could fire, Mara stepped forward, face streaked with ash, eyes glowing with defiance. I don't belong to anyone, she shouted, and I'm not afraid of you anymore. Deke turned toward her, finger tightening on the trigger. That's when Carter moved. The shot rang out like thunder through the hills. Deke's weapon fired, but too late and off aim. The blast struck the dirt. Carter's bullet hit Deke square in the shoulder, knocking him backward into the dirt. The shotgun clattered from his grip as he howled in pain. Carter rushed forward, disarmed him, and stood above the man who once owned a girl like property. "You're done," Carter said coldly. "You ever come near her again, and you won't walk away." Mara stood behind him, shaking, but tall. Her past lay writhing in the dirt at her feet. By morning, Deke was in jail, bleeding and broken, awaiting a trial that the whole town was demanding. Witnesses came forward. Stories surfaced, others who'd seen the bruises, who'd heard her screams through the desert wind, but had stayed silent. No more. The town that once turned its back now stood beside her. But justice wasn't just about bars and judges. It was about healing, and that took longer. Weeks passed. Mara worked at the ranch like it had always been her home. Carter taught her to ride properly, to shoot straight, and to read maps. They fenced new pasture, painted the barn again, planted corn where weeds once ruled. The land, like their hearts, was being rebuilt. One day, Carter handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "School," he said. "Back east. A real one. With books and teachers and other girls your age. You can go, Mara. You deserve to learn, to grow beyond this place." Her eyes welled up. "But this is my home. It always will be," he said. "But home doesn't have to mean staying still. It means knowing someone's always waiting when you come back." She threw her arms around him, and for a long time, neither of them said a word. The silence said everything. She left a month later, riding away on the very horse she'd once feared to approach. Carter stood at the gate, watching her shrink into the horizon. It wasn't easy letting go, but it wasn't the end. Years passed. Carter kept to the ranch, older now, slower, but never empty. Letters came every month, each one with neater handwriting, brighter stories, and deeper wisdom. Mara was learning, thriving. She'd made friends. She wanted to teach. She wanted to build schools for girls like her, girls who thought their pain made them worthless. Then one spring, she returned, not as the limping, broken child who once slept by his fireplace, but as a grown young woman, strong, educated, fearless. She carried a suitcase and a dream, to open the first learning center for girls in Ridge. Carter helped her build it with his own hands. The town showed up for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. People cried. Some apologized. Others brought their daughters to register, daughters they once might have sold off or silenced. Carter stood by as Mara gave a short speech. "I came here as a ghost," she said, "but this town and this man gave me my name back, my dignity, my soul. What a cowboy did for me, I'll never forget, and I'll spend the rest of my life doing for others what he did for me." The crowd rose in applause, but Carter simply smiled, pride swelling in his chest like the breath of a man who'd finally exhaled after years of holding it in. That night, as they sat on the porch beneath the same sky where this story had begun, Carter turned to her. "You did good, kid." "So did you," she replied. "You saved me." He shook his head gently. "No, Mara, you saved yourself. I just stood in the fire with you." And in that moment, two souls, one broken by loss, the other by cruelty, looked at each other and knew. They weren't father and daughter by blood. They were something stronger, chosen by pain, forged by love, bound by courage. And in the quiet stillness of the Ridge night, the fire that once burned everything down now glowed in their hearts, lighting a path for others still wandering in the dark. The wind was soft that evening, carrying the scent of wildflowers through the hills of Ridge. The town was quiet, resting in the arms of a setting sun, while the Carter Ranch stood proud, a symbol of something more than land and wood. It was the place where a girl's life had changed, where a man's broken heart had found reason to beat again. Mara stood near the old porch, watching children laugh in the yard outside the school she had built. The walls were painted with color, the rooms filled with books, laughter, and light. Girls who once hid behind silence now raised their hands with pride. The same hands that once trembled now held pencils, dreams, and hope. Carter sat on a bench beneath the tree where his wife had once planted wild roses. His hair had silvered, his shoulders slower, but his eyes held fire. He watched Mara from a distance, pride etched into every line of his face. She had become what no one thought possible, a voice for the voiceless, a fire in a town that once lived in shadows. She walked over and sat beside him. No words were needed for a moment, just the silence of shared history, pain, and victory. "I was thinking," Mara finally said, "about that first day. When I was limping along the trail, I didn't think anyone would stop. I didn't think I mattered." Carter turned to her slowly. "But you did. You always did. You just needed someone to remind you." She looked down, tears filling her eyes. "You didn't just remind me. You saved me." He shook his head gently. "I didn't save you, Mara. You walked through the fire and didn't let it take you. All I did was stand beside you, so you didn't have to walk it alone." She reached for his weathered hand. That was everything. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the field. The bell from the school rang softly in the distance, calling the girls back inside. Their laughter faded into the wind. Mara stood and looked back toward the ranch house, the barn, the hills. "I used to hate this land," she said. "It reminded me of pain. But now it reminds me of who I became because I survived it." Carter rose beside her. "Sometimes it's the land that breaks us, and sometimes it's the same land that puts us back together." They walked back to the porch as the stars began to emerge one by one. In Ridge, the story of a cowboy and a girl who once limped through life was no longer a whisper. It had become a legacy, one built not on blood, but on choice, on courage, on the kind of love that didn't need a name. And somewhere out in the distance, another girl might be walking that same broken path. But because of Mara, because of Carter, she wouldn't have to walk it alone.